and gas exploration existed in Kansas prior to 1900. In the 1910s, the Wichita Natural Gas Company becomes a major player in Butler County.
Wichita Natural Gas Company was actually a subsidiary of City Service. City Service was located in Bartlesville. And the way I understand it, Wichita Oil and Gas, like I said, was a subsidiary. They were sent into Kansas to look for gas and oil. And what prompted that was the gas that was found down at Augusta, that the city of Augusta had drilled in. And they'd found enough gas to run the city of Augusta, which that's what people were wanting at the time. Oil really didn't have a lot of use at the time. And so Wichita Gas came to Kansas, and Empire, which we have all heard about, they were actually sent into Oklahoma to do the production in Oklahoma for City Service. So Wichita Oil and Gas came, they sent 2 geologists to Augusta who started mapping and looking at the geology of the things, and they realized that there was an anticline running through Augusta, through that area, and that was part of the reason why they had found the gas there. And they followed this anticline on up towards El Dorado, or they felt like it went that way from what I've read. So it was kind of interesting story. We've all heard about the Augusta, El Dorado county wars and whatnot. Well, Augusta was the first one to find natural gas. Well, that kind of rankled the city fathers of El Dorado, so by golly, they were going to find it. And they drilled, a group of townsmen drilled one well here in El Dorado, and it was a dry hole. It had nothing but salt water in it. So the city themselves went out and leased a bunch of property, and they were going to drill a well for natural gas to run the city on. Well, both of their wells were dry holes. So since Wichita Natural Gas was in Augusta, and they felt like the anticline moved up towards El Dorado, they came up here and they leased up thousands and thousands of acres of land surrounding El Dorado. And then they went to the city fathers of El Dorado and said, hey, we'll buy your 798 acres that the city had leased up. We'll give you $800 for it. And the city fathers said, okay, that's fine, but there's a couple of stipulations. And one of those was that they were to drill one well on the city's leases, and if it did not become a marketable well, they were to drill a well on Wichita Gas's lease. And these wells had to go to 3,000 feet. Well, they drilled the first well, and it was a dry hole. So they moved over onto the Stapleton number 1, and they started down, and they hit gas and oil at about 600, 700 feet. But due to the requirements for that the city fathers had put on them, they had to drill on down towards 3,000 feet. And subsequently, they found the actual Stapleton zone at about 2,600 feet. And it was a very marketable zone. It came in at about, I believe they said 135 barrel a day, which that in turn proved to them that their anticline idea was right, and that's what started the El Dorado pool.
The 20th century saw the coming of oil to El Dorado and Butler County. At the Kansas Oil Museum, many of the things that we do have to do with the oil exploration of that period from 1915 to 1945 and beyond.
Stapleton number 1 was the first strike that helped discover the El Dorado oil field. In September of 1915, the Wichita Natural Gas Company staked a test near Oil Hill on land belonging to John Stapleton. On October 6, a heavy showing of oil began at 549 feet, with the deepest pay zone hit at 2,465 feet. This discovery touched off a boom never before or since equaled in Butler County.
Stapleton number one, like I said, proved that their geology was right. Okay, so then they just started stepping out, trying to find the boundaries of the El Dorado Pool. And they went 2 to 3 miles east and west eventually of the Stapleton. And the El Dorado Pool reached, I don't know exactly, but I'm going to say it probably reached 4 or 5 miles north of the Stapleton and probably that much to the south. So, the impact was they knew there was something here, so they just started looking. They claimed that there was like 600 wells drilled the first year after the Stapleton was found.
El Dorado grew dramatically immediately after the Stapleton discovery, growing from 3,000 to 10,000 within 3 years. As oil was discovered in Butler County, the United States entered World War I in 1917. World War I accelerated the process of oil production. The El Dorado oil field, by the war's end in 1918, produced 29 million barrels a day. The El Dorado oil field, an area of 34 square miles, or 22,320 acres, produced 64% of Kansas output and at least 6% of the national output.